Asterisk, what would you do if you discovered the person you're falling for shares a shocking connection to your past? Before we dive into this incredible story, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to our channel for more unbelievable true stories that will leave you speechless. Asterisk. The restaurant was dimly lit, casting a warm glow over the polished wooden tables. Mark fidgeted with his napkin, checking his watch for the third time in 5 minutes. Blind dates weren't his thing, but his sister had been relentless. "You need to get back out there," she'd insisted. "It's been 3 years since Diane left." He'd reluctantly agreed, if only to stop her nagging. As a single father raising 8-year-old Ethan, dating had fallen to the bottom of his priority list. Between his job as an architectural engineer and attending his son's soccer games, there simply wasn't time. The restaurant door opened, and Mark's heart stopped. The woman who walked in was familiar, painfully so. Her chestnut hair fell in waves around her shoulders, and her green eyes widened in recognition when they landed on him. "Mark," she said, her voice barely audible over the restaurant's ambient noise. "Rebecca?" He stood awkwardly, knocking his knee against the table. "You're my blind date?" Rebecca nodded slowly, looking as stunned as he felt. "Your sister set this up?" "And your cousin," Mark said, remembering the connection. "They must have planned this." Rebecca was his best friend Jason's ex-wife. They'd been divorced for nearly 4 years, and Mark hadn't seen her since the split. What made this encounter even more uncomfortable was that Jason had been Mark's closest friend since college, until their falling out 2 years ago over something neither of them would discuss with others. "I should go," Rebecca said, clutching her purse. "No, wait." Mark surprised himself with his response. "We're both here. Might as well have dinner, right? As friends." Rebecca hesitated before sliding into the seat across from him. "Friends," she agreed with a small smile. The initial awkwardness gradually dissolved as they caught up. Rebecca was also raising a child alone, her 7-year-old daughter, Lily. As they shared stories about single parenthood, Mark found himself laughing genuinely for the first time in months. "Remember when Jason tried to assemble that bookshelf for your apartment?" Mark asked, forgetting momentarily the complicated history. Rebecca's smile faltered slightly. "He was never very handy." "Sorry, I shouldn't have brought him up." "It's okay," she said, taking a sip of wine. "It's been 4 years. The divorce was necessary." There was something in her tone that made Mark curious, but he didn't press. Instead, he steered the conversation toward safer topics: their children, their jobs, their hobbies. By the time dessert arrived, Mark realized he was enjoying himself immensely. "This wasn't as terrible as I expected," Rebecca said with a teasing smile. "High praise," Mark laughed. "Would it be completely inappropriate if I asked to see you again?" The question hung between them, loaded with complications. Rebecca studied him for a long moment before answering. "I'd like that," she said finally. "But there's something you should know first." Mark's phone rang before she could continue. It was his babysitter, calling to say Ethan had a fever. The conversation would have to wait. "I'm sorry, I have to go," he said, already signaling for the check. "Rain check on that conversation?" Rebecca nodded, understanding in her eyes. "Of course. Your son comes first." As Mark rushed home to his sick child, he couldn't shake the feeling that whatever Rebecca had been about to tell him was important. But Ethan's needs took precedence, as they always did. The following week saw Mark and Rebecca cautiously building something new. They met for coffee, took walks in the park, and talked for hours on the phone after their children were asleep. Mark found himself looking forward to their conversations, to her insightful perspectives and quick wit. A month after their first date, they decided it was time for their children to meet. They arranged a playdate at a local park, both nervous about how Ethan and Lily would interact. What if they hate each other? Mark worried as they watched the children approach the playground. "Then we'll figure it out," Rebecca said, squeezing his hand reassuringly. Their concerns proved unfounded. Ethan and Lily took to each other immediately, racing to the swings with the easy camaraderie of old friends. They look like they've known each other forever, Mark observed, watching as Ethan showed Lily how to pump her legs to swing higher. Rebecca's expression grew serious. Mark, there's something I've been trying to tell you. About the kids. Mark turned to her, noting the tension in her shoulders. What is it? Look at them, she said softly. Really look. Mark studied the children. Ethan with his dark hair and hazel eyes, Lily with her similar coloring and the same distinctive dimple in her left cheek when she smiled. A dimple that matched Ethan's exactly. A cold realization began to form in the pit of his stomach. That's not possible, he whispered. We need to talk somewhere private, Rebecca said, her voice strained. Not in front of them. They found a bench at the edge of the playground, still within sight of the children but far enough away for privacy. Jason isn't Lily's biological father, Rebecca began, her hands twisting in her lap. We had been trying for a baby for years with no success. Tests showed Jason had fertility issues. Mark's mind raced ahead, connecting dots he didn't want to connect. Rebecca. We used a sperm donor, she continued, her voice barely above a whisper. Anonymous, through a clinic. Jason didn't want anyone to know, he was embarrassed. That's why we never told anyone, not even you. Mark felt dizzy. And you think? I don't think, Mark. I know. Rebecca met his eyes directly. When I saw Ethan that first night at the restaurant, I knew immediately. He looks exactly like Lily. They have the same mannerisms, the same laugh. I requested the donor's information from the clinic last week, citing medical reasons. They gave me a donor number that I cross-referenced with some paperwork I still had. You're saying Ethan and Lily share the same donor father, Mark said slowly. That they're half-siblings. Rebecca nodded. Yes. The revelation hit Mark like a physical blow. 3 years ago, when Diane had left him and Ethan, she'd confessed that she'd used a sperm donor without his knowledge. Their entire marriage had been built on a lie. Mark wasn't Ethan's biological father. He'd been devastated but had chosen to keep the truth private, raising Ethan as his own because biology didn't matter to him. The boy was his son in every way that counted. Does Jason know? Mark asked, his voice hoarse. About the donor, yes. About the connection to Ethan? No. Rebecca looked toward the playground where the children were now building a sandcastle together. I didn't know until I saw you both that night. Mark ran a hand through his hair, trying to process this bombshell. This is why you and Jason divorced. Partly, Rebecca admitted. He couldn't accept that Lily wasn't biologically his. He tried, but it created a rift between us that grew over time. Eventually, he said he wanted a real child of his own and left. The pieces suddenly clicked into place. 2 years ago, Jason had approached Mark, drunk and angry, accusing him of having what should have been mine. Mark had assumed he was talking about his promotion at work, something Jason had been bitter about. They'd argued, and Jason had stormed off. They hadn't spoken since. He knew about Ethan, Mark realized. Somehow, he found out Ethan wasn't biologically mine, and he was jealous that I stayed while he left. Rebecca's eyes widened. That would explain so much. He became obsessed with the donor, trying to find out who he was. I thought it was about Lily, but maybe he discovered the connection to Ethan. They sat in silence for a moment, watching their children play together, oblivious to the complicated web of connections that bound them. What do we do now? Mark finally asked. I don't know, Rebecca admitted. But I do know that I've enjoyed getting to know you these past weeks. And seeing our children together feels right, somehow. Like the universe correcting a mistake. Mark looked at her, really looked at her, and saw the strength that had carried her through her divorce, through single motherhood, through this impossible situation. He felt a surge of admiration, and something deeper that he wasn't ready to name. "We take it one day at a time," he said, reaching for her hand. "And we decide together what's best for the kids." "Together," Rebecca repeated, intertwining her fingers with his. The following months brought challenges neither had anticipated. They had to decide whether to tell the children about their biological connection, how to handle potential medical implications, and how to navigate their own developing relationship with this complication at its center. They consulted a family therapist who specialized in blended families and donor conception issues. Dr. Patel helped them understand that while the situation was unusual, it wasn't unprecedented. Many donor-conceived siblings find each other later in life, she explained during one session. "Your case is unique because the parents are involved and the children are young, but the principles remain the same. Honesty, age-appropriate information, and emphasizing that family is about love, not just genetics." With Dr. Patel's guidance, Mark and Rebecca decided to tell the children when they were older, perhaps around 12 or 13, when they could better understand the complexities of donor conception. For now, they would focus on building a strong foundation as friends who cared deeply for each other. But life had other plans. 6 months into their relationship, Ethan came down with a mysterious illness. High fevers, joint pain, and extreme fatigue sent them rushing to specialists. After numerous tests, the diagnosis came back: juvenile rheumatoid arthritis, a condition with genetic components. "We need to know if Lily might be at risk," Mark said as they sat in his living room after Ethan had finally fallen asleep, exhausted from his latest treatment. Rebecca nodded, her face pale with worry. "This changes our timeline. We need to be honest with them sooner than we planned." The conversation with the children was difficult but necessary. They simplified the concept of donor conception, explaining that sometimes parents need help to have babies, and that a kind person had helped both Mark's ex-wife and Rebecca to have Ethan and Lily. "So we're like brother and sister?" Ethan asked, his young face scrunched in confusion. "Half-siblings," Rebecca explained gently. "You share one biological parent, but not both." "Cool!" Lily exclaimed, to everyone's surprise. "I always wanted a brother." The children's acceptance was a relief, but it was just the beginning of their journey. Medical information needed to be shared, family dynamics renegotiated, and their own relationship carefully considered in light of these new realities. Through it all, Mark found himself falling deeper in love with Rebecca. Her resilience, her unwavering support of both children, her ability to find humor in the most challenging situations, all of it drew him closer to her. On a crisp autumn evening, a year after their first blind date, Mark took Rebecca back to the same restaurant where it all began. "I've been thinking," he said after they'd ordered. "About us, about the kids, about this strange, wonderful family we're building." Rebecca smiled, the candlelight reflecting in her eyes. "So have I." "I know our situation isn't conventional," Mark continued, reaching across the table for her hand. "But I've realized that conventional is overrated. What matters is that we found each other, that our children found each other, and that somehow, in the middle of all this complexity, we've created something beautiful." "We have," Rebecca agreed, her voice thick with emotion. "I'm not proposing, not yet," Mark clarified with a nervous laugh. "But I want you to know that I'm in this for the long haul. You, me, Ethan, Lily, we're a family now, in our own unique way." Rebecca squeezed his hand, tears glistening in her eyes. "I wouldn't have it any other way." As they left the restaurant that night, walking hand in hand under a canopy of stars, Mark reflected on the strange twists of fate that had brought them together. A blind date, a shocking revelation, a medical crisis, all of it had led to this moment, to this woman, to this family that defied conventional definitions but was bound by something stronger than blood: choice. The choice to love, to stay, to build something new from the fragments of what came before. 2 years later, Mark and Rebecca stood together in their backyard, surrounded by friends and family, as they exchanged vows. Ethan and Lily stood beside them, now 10 and 9 years old, beaming with pride as their parents formalized what they had known all along, that they were a family, unconventional but unbreakable. Jason had even come to the wedding, his initial anger long since transformed into a tentative acceptance. Time and therapy had helped him understand that family took many forms, and that his connection to Lily wasn't diminished by biology. As Mark looked around at the gathering, at his son who wasn't biologically his but was his in every way that mattered, at his new stepdaughter who shared his son's dimpled smile, at his bride whose strength and love had guided them through the storm, he felt a profound sense of gratitude. Life rarely followed a straight path. It twisted and turned, sometimes bringing pain, sometimes bringing unexpected joy. The secret that could have torn them apart had instead brought them together, creating a family bound not by conventional ties but by something far more powerful, the choice to love each other, day after day, through whatever challenges life presented. And in the end, wasn't that what family was truly about? If this incredible story touched your heart, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel for more extraordinary tales of love, family, and the unexpected connections that change our lives forever. Remember, sometimes the most beautiful families are the ones we choose to build, one day at a time.